Today we're going to learn how to make fresh pasta. What you will need is an egg and plain flour. The best flour to get is 00 flour, and you can find that down at your local supermarket. It'll literally have 00 plain flour written on the packet, and it's the best for kneading and going through the pasta machine. As I just said, the other thing you will need is a pasta machine, and it'll look something like this. Okay, so it's got the different attachment points you can have here. You can actually buy extra accessories for that. Or you've got the main rollers, which are at the front here, and that helps flatten it out and get to that thickness you want it to be at. Okay, so these can range from hundreds of dollars to this one, which is actually $12.95. So for all you tight asses who don't think they can, efficiently afford to make pasta, well, save yourself a couple of beers on a Saturday night and go pick up one of these babies. Because I have only got 600 gram eggs in the fridge, I'm using 2, just purely because the formula actually is for every 100 grams of flour you use 1 egg, and I know for certain that 600 grams is not enough. So it's 1 regular size egg, so I've only got 600 grams, which is relatively small. So you can test that yourself as you go through your own measurements. If the dough is too thick, it's too much flour, it's too runny, you need to add more flour. So work that yourself. But let's get started. Okay guys, so before you get started, you want to make sure the surface you're working under is very, very clean and also dry. If it's wet or moist in any way, the flour is going to stick to the surface, and it's going to affect the way you can actually knead through the dough. Obviously, if it's dirty, those dirt particles will get into the dough, and when it rolls out, you see big black, particles. It's not exactly what you want to see when you're about to have your pasta. So, first thing you're going to do is just lay down your 100 grams of flour. In my case, I'm going to go about 160 just because I'm using 2 eggs. Okay, and what you want to do with that, you want to make a well in the center. Alright? Just a bit of advice, if you're not sure about your measurements, or if you're unsure with your flour to egg ratio, it's always better to go more egg than it is flour, just purely because you can always add flour, but it's hard to add like a part of an egg, because then you obviously got to, what are you going to do with the rest of it? So what I've done there is just created a little well in the center. All I'm going to do is crack my eggs into that. So there's 1 and 2. Alright, let's see. What you're going to do now is just scramble that up. And all you do is grab a fork, prick each one, make sure the yolk separates, and just carefully try to keep it in. Understandably, if you struggle particularly early on not to. Whisk that all together. And pick it up just a little bit of pace. Okay, then what you want to do, once it's scrambled enough, you start to add in bits of flour. Okay, try not to add off the top because you still want to keep it in as best as possible. If it does run out, don't worry, you can just mix it in again, it's not a big deal. So start to push it out, add in bits of flour. We're starting to thicken up the egg, like that. And it's really simple, you can see it's starting to thicken already. Obviously, if you cave into complete wall, liquid's going to fall towards that area. So the yolk is already starting to go towards that caved in a bit, so just kind of push it around again. Once you come to a point where you're really enjoying, it's nice and comfortable, just start to peel it all in. Okay, and mix it all together. As it thickens up, it won't run as much, but don't be afraid if you have to add more flour or whatever, that's not a problem. So eventually just try and keep it all in. Again, mix the flour in. Okay, now I'm just going to go all for broke. Okay, so just mix it all through. Again, if you're a bit worried about the runniness, you can always add flour, but it's always harder if you're going to have, too much flour and not enough egg. See, it's really thickened up. Okay, so from here, this point here where it's starting to thick, when I get my fork, I use my hands. Because your hands offer a lot of heat, it's a great way to bring the actual dough together. Now carefully just kind of flop it around just a little bit. You don't want to push it all the way down towards the bench because it is still quite moist and it will stick to the bench. So just kind of move it around a little bit, separate it from the flour, get a little bit of movement going, and when you get comfortable, pick up a bit of flour, rub it over the top, and start to move it together. Now I'm sure you've seen it before, things like pushing down, folding over are very common methods of kneading, and you can get into a little rhythm. So what I'm doing is pushing down, folding back over, pushing down, folding back over. Now automatically you can see it's still quite loose, and you can still quite see the liquid in that. So I'm just going to get a little bit more flour. I'm going to put it off to the side so I can just add it with my hands. So I'm just going to put that out in front here. Okay, so you guys can't see that, but I've got a little pile of flour, and all I'm doing is picking up my hands and just going to add or dust that to the surface. I'm just going to repeat this until it comes together. So again, good technique, push down, fold over, push down, fold over. Don't be afraid to get again all the bits of flour again. Use it as like a mop, it picks up a lot of stuff. It's getting to that point now where I can actually be comfortable to push down just a little bit because the surface is well dusted. I don't have to have that thought of, oh, I'm going to have to pick some flour and egg off the surface of the bench. It's just going to roll through like that. Okay, this process should take up to about 4 minutes. It's pretty fun. Just get your hands dirty. Make sure you're always adding the flour back in, dusting it over the top and folding it all the way through. When it starts to stick like that, just add a bit of flour, roll it through. Push all the way down to the center now because you want to make sure you're not just getting the surface. You can only see it starting to come together. See, that's starting to formulate dough. Alright, now what you're going to do towards the end of it is just make sure that as you push to the very center, it's not going to stick completely. You still want it to be a little bit loose, yeah? Make sure it's not too dense. If it's too thick, you've gone too far. Okay, there we go. Got ourselves a bit of dough. See that? Nice and movable. Okay guys, so we've got our pasta machine set up. It's usually got a little G-clamp in there, so you make sure you get the rolling handle in as well. So what we're going to do now to start off with is simply just make sure dough's nice and set. You can let it rest for half an hour, which lets it hold together a little bit easier. Or if you're in a hurry, it doesn't really matter that much. It won't stick as easily, but you can go straight away. Okay, so I've got my little pile of flour already set up. I've got my dough. What you're going to do with that 100-gram serve, you're just going to chop it in half. Okay, and you're going to use half of it. Again, we're going to give a bit of a dust. Pin out. Now, the closest thing to me for a rolling pin right now is my dad's bottle of wine. So I'm just going to use that. He won't mind. So, simply just get one of those, dust it just a little bit, and roll it through. Okay, it works just like a rolling pin. Okay, the reason you're doing this is just so it sets on the first set of the actual pasta machine. So make sure your pasta machine is set to 1, which is the thickest setting, just so you would let it roll through. So all we do is get it set, it's on number 1 already, allow it to roll all the way through, like that. Okay, you're going to dust that. Okay, so again, just get a little bit of it, sprinkle it through, rub it in, fold it over, and we're going to go through again. The reason why we fold it over is there's something called gluten in flour and wheat, so you make sure it gets into it and allows it to stretch right through. Again, fold it again. On the earlier setting, so on number 1, you fold it. The reason why you dust, as I said, helps it pass through easier, but also when you actually get to that final stage of separating the flour, separating the actual pasta itself, it separates much more easy. Okay? So I'm just going to go through one more time, unfolded. So you always go through twice on the same setting, unfolded. I'm just going to pull that out. So now I'm going to do, I folded over 3 times, went through. On the final one, I didn't refold. So I'm going to turn it to number 2. And from there, I'm going to pass it through. You get used to being able to handle a pasta machine. So that's on number 2. Again, I'm just going to dust a little bit, rub it in. Bent surface is looking real good. And again, so again on the same setting, twice through. That's 2 on that one. And we're going to continue doing this all the way up into number 7. If you're using lasagna, you'd only ever use pretty much the first or the second number, so the first or the second setting, just because the thickness in lasagna is a bit different to that of pasta. And there we have it. So that's your sheet of pasta. You can see it's quite well put together. The egg's fine, nice and thin. Now from that you can shape it into what? I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just going to separate into half, easy to work with. So we've got a couple different settings here. So we've got more of a linguine thickness. Okay, so I'm just going to put the first sheet in. Just like the thicker roller, just roll it through. Making sure as you get close towards the end of the sheet, you want to make sure you have your hand somewhere underneath catching through, because if you fall, it's a little bit easier, harder to handle. So like that, you got your first with sheets. Okay, so again, nice and filly. They're a bit thicker than spaghetti. That's linguine. And what I'm going to do is I put on my dowel, which is right behind me, my sandwich maker. Dowels allow things to dry out, so it allows your pasta to dry out. So by dinner time, you'll be ready for the boiling water. Okay, so your next one I'm going to do is angel hair or spaghetti. So I'm just going to put that on the timer setting. Okay, this is why having different accessories can be useful, just so you can get different types of pasta. Okay, again, making sure as you get towards the end of the sheet, you've got your hands underneath to catch that pasta coming through. And you can see that's more like spaghetti.